There we go. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining in. Today, it's just me. No Austin. Go figure. So I'm going to go ahead and let's look at the comments. Nothing there yet. I will, of course, answer any and all questions that you have. So this is the Real Estate Show. We do it every Saturday from 10 to 11. Typically, it's Austin and I answering all questions. And today, you've got me. So until anybody jumps on, I know, it's a gorgeous Saturday. If it were me, I'd be out doing stuff as well. Let's go ahead and say. There we go. Okay. Now we've got this thing going live. All right. My camera wasn't working for a minute. Anyway, good morning, everybody. Thank you again for joining us. Usually this is Austin and I. We're here doing a live Q&A, answering any real estate questions that you have. Today, it's just me, which is super fun. So I'm going to start this thing off with a little bit of a real estate update, and please throw some questions in the chat. I would love to answer anything that you got, anything that's on your mind, real estate related or not. In fact, I'm going to throw that in the chat real quick. There we go. All right. So, couple of quick updates on the real estate market in general. So early July, like first week and a half, 2 weeks of July, we saw a little bit of a slowdown. It was more of a bump in the road. It was almost like it got a little quiet, right? And more than just a typical 4th of July, more than a typical like a couple of days off. We saw a little bit of a literal pause for about a week and a half. And right now as a team, we're selling somewhere between 90 and 95 homes a month. So we've got a big enough sample size so that we can kind of see an overall view of the market, if that makes sense. Since then, real estate's gotten, of course, back on track. But one very interesting thing is the multiple offers have started. They haven't gone away, but they've really slowed down as far as number of offers go. Okay. Now, here's what I mean by that. From, let's call it February all the way through June, it was not atypical to see something like 20 or 25 or even 30 offers on a property. Now, since the second week of July and now through mid-August, we're seeing more like 3 to 5 offers per property. And you've kind of heard us say that before, but now that we've got another week of data under our belt, we know this to be true. One thing that I think is super nifty is the National Association of Realtors just put out a little bit of new data for us based on that first week of July all the way up till now. Pre-July 1st, 74% of properties were receiving 2 or more offers, which is pretty cool. 2 or more offers. Hey, Mark, how you doing? There we go. Which is great. Now that number has gone down to 48%, under half. And I know 48% of homes going into a multiple offer situation is still a big number. It really is. I mean, we're talking, half, right? Which is huge as compared to pretty much any other year on record, right? But it's definitely not 74%. So we're kind of recede a little bit. Now, on our side of it, what we've seen as a team is 46% of our offers accepted. Okay. So we're no longer in the land of having to write 4, 5, 6, 7, make 4, 5, 6, 7 bids on homes. Our buyers are not having to do that anymore. Right now, we're averaging 2 offers per home gotten, which is a drastic difference from February, March, and April, right? So back in that time, we were up in the 4 range, which is still beating the market, which is pretty cool, because I've heard the horror stories of some buyers making as many as 30 offers or 35 offers on properties, like making 5, 6 offers at a time, just hoping to get something. And we never really got too far above 4, which is pretty cool. But now we're down to 2, and that number is trending in our favor just again in these last couple of weeks, right? Which is super cool. And again, guys, my name is Mike Perna with Keller Williams Realty, team leader of the Perna team. Typically I've got Austin today, but I don't have Austin today, and that's okay. Throw any and all real estate questions in the chat, and I'll just kind of keep on talking about the market until I get a couple of questions there. So that's what we're seeing here locally in Metro Detroit is the number of offers going way down, which is great, which also provides a really nice opportunity for people that may have been looking for homes back in spring. They had been outbid on multiple occasions, kind of gave up for a little bit. Probably time to jump back into the market. Okay. And we've got a couple of buyers that are in that boat where back in January, February, they gave up the hunt. They released the property, went back into a year lease, and now they're coming back into the market. And part of the reason why they're choosing now, which I think is a smart move, is if you've got your lease until December or until January, which is not that far away, guys. I mean, we are what, 19 weeks left in the year, 20 weeks left in the year. That's about it. That's about all we get. We're well past the halfway point at this point. If we're looking at December, again, a lot of sellers, and when I say a lot, I mean the vast majority, around 80%, they need some time after closing because they're used from that to go to the next one. And bridge loans are not big right now. And I'll talk about what those are in just a moment. So kind of wrapping this all with a bow. If you've got a lease coming up, let's say December 15th, right? You definitely want a little bit of time to move. You want some time to maybe paint some walls, replace the carpet, do whatever it is that you want to do to that home. So let's call that 2 weeks, which I think is still pushing it. A month is probably better. So let's call it a month. So November 15th that you want to get keys, right? That's a fair statement. November 15th, it gives you a solid 30 days. You can get a painter in there. You can get, carpet done. Some basic stuff. If we're talking about redoing kitchens and bathrooms, that's running a lot longer right now. And I'll talk about that as well. So let's call it November 15th. Most sellers are looking for an 45 days, right? After the closing because they're looking at doing the same thing. Wherever next, they're going to want to do paint and carpet and things like that. And again, guys, we want to, in this market, put our best foot forward. Sometimes that means we'll close and we'll give you occupancy when you want, not necessarily when we want, right? And that can save a bunch of dollars in that buying process, right? We've had a couple dozen purchasers get offers accepted below the top offer simply because our timing was more flexible, right? I'll say that one more time. Our timing was more flexible, and the seller looked at that and said, instead of having to do a double move, which could be 5,000 to 10,000, we'll take this offer that's not the highest, right? And that's not uncommon. Not at all, especially not in this market. So if we're at November 15th, and let's say that the seller needs 60 days, that brings us back to October 15th, September 15th, and today is August 21st, right? Takes about 30 days to get. We're seeing loans go through a little bit faster than that right now, between the 20 and 25 day mark. But again, there's no guarantee and things can happen. We can see some sort of an issue on the inspection. We have to go back and negotiate, which could tack on a couple of days, an appraisal issue that could tack on a couple of days, a title issue that could tack on a couple of days. All of those things can happen. So let's call it 30 days. So if we're looking at a mid-December, we want to be stuff in-house, moved in and done. Today's the day. Now's the time. Right? We need to be out and actually getting offers in on homes now. And this is, again, where several of our buyers back in December, January, February, and even March of last year had decided, you know what, I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna maybe do a real year. So there's not a lot of. Now is the time for those guys to jump back into the market, right? Now is the time. Today is the day. And again, it just goes back to timing and making sure that as a purchaser, you've got enough time to do what you want with the home. And at the same time, we're not shoving the seller out the door, which will cost thousands of dollars to the buyer, right? Like it'll cost to the seller, but the seller's going to pass that cost along to the buyer. And right now in this market, they can't, if that makes sense. And I'll say this, like I wrote an offer for myself on a home last week. Now this one was relocation, different. And with relocation, they don't allow time after closing. So with relocation, just for liability purposes, like Relo is super scared of, and they're very, very lawsuit averse. Let me put it that way. So with relocation, they tell the sellers, hey, listen, you got to be out at closing, period. That's how that works. And when I went and saw the house, one thing I noticed was they had not even started packing. And they had a lot of stuff, like a lot of stuff. So I put in a flexible closing date. So I said, okay, we can close anytime from, let's call it September 10th, all the way to November 15th. I don't really care when we close, right? I'm in my home. I'm not selling it. It's not going anywhere. It's going to be a rental property. I can stay here forever. It doesn't matter, right? There's no impetus for me to get out the door, so to speak. So I wrote the offer to be extremely flexible on the closing date because I wanted that term. I wanted that term to be seller and say, okay, yeah, guys, we really do have a lot of stuff. Take a minute. And a typical 30-day closing, it could be a little bit difficult, especially with kids and pets and everything else. We don't necessarily want to be pushed out the door, right? If that makes sense. Now, that said, I also didn't win the offer, right? And just a little bit of honesty on that one. I wrote what I felt the home was worth, or at least what it was worth to me. And someone had jumped above my offer by quite a substantial amount, and their offer was a cash offer. Good chunk down, but still had a mortgage, and they opted for the cash offer instead. So, like literally 15% higher than mine, and that's okay. We don't win them all, and at that price, it would not have been worth it for me to win. Hey guys, okay, reintroduce. My name is Mike Perna with the Perna team with Keller Williams. Please jump in with any questions you got. Austin and I do the show every Saturday from 10 to 11. Today, I see a bunch of you guys on, and thank you so much for the thumbs up on those as well. But throw in whatever you got, whatever questions you have, whatever comments you have. So two things I wanted to were bridge loans and then also contract work right now. So bridge loans. In the past, we used to be able to do what's called bridge loans, and they're still out there, but they're very, very few, and the terms are far different than they used to be. Now, a bridge loan is exactly, it bridges the equity gap from one property to another. So it would allow you, let's say you own a home and it's worth $300,000, and then let's say you owe $100,000, an equity amount of, let's say, $200,000. A bridge loan would typically allow you to go up to either 80 or 90%, depending on the bank. So let's call it 80%. So in this case, they would allow you to go up to a total loan amount of $240,000. So that's $140,000 that you can and use as a down payment on the next property without selling the first property. They were a little higher in interest rate. Typically speaking, you had a payback period of 90 days to 6, right? Because the intention is to go secure property number 2, do whatever you need to do to it, sell property number 1, wrap that all back up in a new mortgage, like just a regular standard 30-year or 15-year fixed. So that used to do. Those are largely unavailable. Very, very few banks are doing them. And a lot of them have terms and limitations that are so averse, it's not even worth doing. So in this day and age, what we're doing is we're seeing sellers choose to find their home and then put their property on the market as soon as they have an offer that's accepted. What's happening. And unfortunately for the buyer of that home, it also means that seller needs a little more time, right? Second, contractors, tight in short supply right now. So that's one thing I'm advising sellers to do is jump out in front of it, jump out in front of the home selling process right now. If you're 6 months out, if you're 8 months out, now is a good time to have somebody like us out there. If we're even considering next spring, we're meeting with sellers today that are going on the market in March and April because the contracting situation is super tight right now. And here's what I mean by that. So my folks are thinking about, actually they're moving forward with it, redoing their kitchen and kitchen, bathroom, hardwood flooring, the whole shebang. Big job, right? I mean, we're talking a $75,000 job, not a small job whatsoever. Now, what happens is, or what has happened is, I'm sorry about that. I had a call come in there. make sure to zero that out. There we go. So what has happened, they've had a couple of quotes out, a couple of contractors out to quote the work. Two of them have just kind of disappeared off the map. Literally, they're just gone. They're not returning calls. They're not anything, right? They came out, did the quote, and left. The third one, actually not necessarily the contractor that they wanted to go with, is returning calls, and they happen to be the most expensive, right? Of course, go figure. The issue with that is even this third one that is returning calls and is starting to look at the time, they're looking at starting early next year, right? So we're no longer in a situation, and we have years now, but we're no longer in a situation where we can call up a contractor and say, hey, I want a new kitchen. Can you start next week? You know, we're not even in the situation where it's, hey, I want a new kitchen. Can you start next month? You know, for the most part, we're further out. Doesn't matter the size of the job. We're further out, and we're talking about a 90 day to a 6-month turn time work that needs to be done. And that's not just kitchens. That's windows. And in a lot of cases, that's roofing. More recently, we had and you guys know this that are in Southeast Michigan, we've had a ton of rain, a ton of wind damage, and we're still trying to get crews out to some areas to clean that stuff up because, again, the contractors are just so backed up. Now, that harkens back to the last down market, and I'll kind of give you a little history as to where this came from. During the 06, 07 run-up, you know, we saw a whole ton of new construction happening, all of that kind of thing, right? And then when 08 happened, and we saw the market start crashing, and we saw prices go below what builders could build for. As builders went out of the business, contracting also dried up, and it dried up on both ends of it. It dried up because new home construction fell 8%, right? Which also means that 80% of homes are not being built. 80% of contractors don't have jobs to build homes anymore. But we also saw in that market just general contracting, right? Like not being redone. Bathrooms were not being redone. Basements were not being finished. Home additions were not happening. Patios were not being poured. New driveways were being put off a year or two. New roofs were being put off a year or two. Windows were being put off a year or two. All of this stuff, people were trying to extend the life because nobody knew what was going to happen. And a lot of people were afraid of their own jobs, and they didn't want to get tied up into some contracting work that could cost anywhere, even as low as $5,000. But let's even call it a new roof at 8 or 10, windows at 15, furnace at 8, driveway between 7 and 20,000. I mean, these are things where people tried to stretch it along, and as they stretched it, the number of jobs contracted went down, which again caused the business. Fast forward to today. Right now, we have around 9 million contractors, and I'll call it skilled trade, laborers, electricians, plumbers, basement finishers, all of that, right? Contractors. We have about 9 million contractors in the U.S., and we actually have to have jobs and spots for 12.7. So we're missing between 2.5 and 4 million contractors to get back up to full tilt to match the demand. And that's a lot. That's a lot of people missing in the workforce. It's actually so much. So I'll say this. One of my rental properties, I have a guy out there now, and this is taking me a couple of months to actually secure him and get him out there to redo the kitchen, redo the bathrooms, carpet, paint. Let's polish it all up because we're going to get back out there and re-rent it here pretty shortly. The last tenant didn't necessarily do a number on it, but it was just due. It was older kitchens, older countertops, older everything to start with. Several years, a decade of running this thing, right? Piled on top of that. It was just due. So two funny things about this. One, it took me, a solid 3 months to get some actually to start doing work, right? That's number one. Number two, the gentleman that I've got that's doing work, who's actually very good. I'm very pleasantly surprised. He's an ex-engineer from General Motors. So he had started doing some tile work, started doing some cabinet installs, started doing like a half bath redo, like just started small, just for some extra side money, right? So this was his side hustle. His side hustle was, installing laminate floors, installing vanities, installing, tile backsplashes. Nothing too crazy. But still, he did well with it. Come to find out, he ended up doing so well with it, he quit the engineering gig at General Motors and went into this full time, and now he's got 2 guys working for him. Go figure. And that illustrates where the market is. So what we know is electrical engineers, which is what he is, and mechanical engineers are at a severe shortage, and they're pretty much writing their own ticket with the big 3 right now, or any of the automotive manufacturers. It doesn't matter if it's one of the American ones or one of the other ones. And even at that level, he found it more lucrative, and he also found a better quality of life going into business for himself as a contractor. And that's huge. And that speaks volumes as to where the market is right now. And I feel like I'm doing a lot of talking. Guys, throw some questions in there. Anything you got. Anything at all. Yeah. Anyway. So here we are going into fall of 2021. And again, I am advising anybody and everybody who is anybody that's considering buying, selling, whatever that looks like. If you're looking at making a move anytime between December and March, now is the time to start getting that prepared. All right. If you're considering selling, now is the time to have a real estate agent out, put an eyeball on the house, help advise on what to do to make sure to maximize that home value, and then also what to stay away from that's going to cost you too much money. If you're a home buyer, again, now's the time to start getting out there and starting seeing properties, because even if you're looking to move way over in February, that'll give you a solid 30 to 45 days of looking before you actually have to make you're getting down to be able to get the best price for you and get the best terms for you in this market. And if you're someone who had been looking in the market previously, and I'm talking like January to, let's say, April, but decided to release the property, at this point in time, the number of offers have come down substantially per property. So it used to be in this area, it was hard to find a home for sale that had less than 15 offers on it. Now 2 to 4 is kind of where we're at. On the selling side, that's not a bad thing either, because home values are still way up there. And when I say way up there, I mean we are 40% beyond the top of the market before the last crash, right? National average at that point was 290,000. We're at 367,000 now. And we've got some fantastic interest rates. But questions, guys, shoot anything you got out there. I'm running out of market updates. It's going to be a super short live. And thank you for the thumbs up. I appreciate it. Yeah. I'm trying to think of what else is going on in the real estate market today. But other than the multiple offers situation kind of drying up, there hasn't been a lot of changes. Jerome Powell, Janet Yellen, because of the inflation rate lately, which has been super high, inflation has been huge, has been trying to push any interest rate increases over into deep 2022 instead of 2021. I'm trying to think of what else is going on that could affect the market. Oh, here's something interesting. So oil prices are falling, and we haven't pump yet, but I'm seeing it this week. Oil prices have come down over 10% in the last 5 days. And again, a lot of that has to do with this Delta variant and what's going on there with COVID. So a couple of things have happened, which I think is kind of super surprising. Number one, Goldman Sachs has adjusted down their GDP expectations for Q4 and Q1. Well, Q3, 4, and 1, really. So they've adjusted down the GDP growth. And we're right back on track to where we were pre-pandemic with our GDP right now, right? We're just right back to pretty much this month. But yet that has been, the confidence has been going down. Second, U of M put out a study showing that general economy confidence is at a 12-year low, which is huge. Third, because of those couple of things and because Delta variant is slowing travel, oil prices have been coming down as demand's coming down. And we haven't seen it at the pump yet, but that usually shows up at the pump a week to 3 weeks later, right? So what does this all mean to us? This means that our work from home life is probably going to be extended a little bit. We're seeing a lot of people do that. It means that some events are being shut down. Like I saw Garth Brooks cancel 3 concerts, right? Things like that. It's going to be interesting over the next 6 months to see what exactly happens and where we go economically. Well, that was a good one. Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it. Are you able to help buyers find homes in your market before they appear in the multiple listing service? Yes, actually, we are. And that's a great question. So we work with a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers pre-market. And what that looks like is when we've got a buyer that we know, and then, you know, they have to choose to work with us because we're going to put in a lot of work and a lot of energy and a lot of expense, right? But when they choose to work with us and they want to be in these 3 neighborhoods or these 2 neighborhoods, we will door knock, call, and hard mail to find any way possible looking to sell a home. Sellers really like that because they're getting a fair value for their house for the most part, but then also they don't have to undergo, you know, 20 showings or 25 showings. They don't necessarily need to clean and paint and do all the things because we're just bringing them a ready buyer that wants to be in that neighborhood. And we're saying, hey, we've got a buyer. If it works for the buyer, great. We write up an offer and then we're done. And then life is good. It also helps the seller as well because it gives them a little extra time because a lot of times we're catching these sellers 1 to 3 months before they were going to go on the market anyway. So it gives the sellers a nice peace of mind that that they've got a solidified offer. They don't have to worry about it. They don't have to worry about where the money's coming from for the next home. And then they can start looking at that next move anyway. That's a great question. So yes, to answer that question. Let's see. Jennifer, I've seen advertisements of loan products that are for beginner investors that want to flip a house and sell after the work is done. I think they're considered bridge loans. What's your take on this with contractors being in short supply? That's a great question. So there are a couple of good contractor loans, and there's some hard money stuff as well. A couple of things that I would look at is, I mean, even more than rate and terms, you're right. You're looking at time frame. So a lot of hard money lenders and a lot of these bridger loans, these kind of like beginner investor loans, they're looking for a 90-day to 6-month total turnaround. And if we're looking at 90 days right now, if we're not doing all the work ourselves, it's really difficult to get that paid back on. Once that happens, with the loans that I've seen and then it's not just for beginner investors, it's for any investor. If they go over, a lot of times you'll see a 5 up to a 10-point hit. So what does that mean? That means if we took a loan of 100,000 and we go past the 90 days, there's an automatic extra 5 or 10%, 5 or 10,000 top of the loan, in addition to any points or interest rate as well. So that loan of 100,000 could end up costing us 15 or even 20,000, completely eating up the profit on a flip. A more standard investment loan where you put in 30% down, and they're more built for long term, but I've used them for flip as well. Way to go. Some of the hard money people out there, they are and they're able to right now just absolutely kind of gouge people, if that makes sense. One place that I would go is the Michigan Real Estate Investors, MREA Association, Michigan Real Estate Investors Association, which is run by Wendy Patton. Generally speaking, you've got 3 or 4 groups of people go to that meeting. One is somebody that has a home but has no money and no time. So they've got a great property, but they're either out of money, as in they don't have any, or they're time, as in they don't have the time to do the flip, right? Or maybe they have no money, but they have the time and they can do the work themselves. Some combination there. You have people that have the money but don't have the house, right? And I've been both of those before. I've gone to that group both as someone that has a home but needed a hard money loan, and I've gone there before as someone that has money and would like to just shelf it somewhere where I'm actually making something instead of just being in a bank making nothing, right? So I've been the hard money lender. I've seen contractors go there looking for work, which is nice. That's person number 3. And then person number 4 is, again, somebody that can partner with somebody that can do the work, but also doesn't have the money or have the home. So one of my guys is going through this right now where they're doing a flip. And he sourced the property, right? But he does not have the cash, or is not putting the cash in, should I say? I don't know if he has the cash. He's just not putting it in. And also doesn't have the experience or the technical expertise to be able to go and do kitchens, bathrooms, electrical, all of that. So he's got another gentleman that is bringing the funds to the table. And then he's got another gentleman that's going in, and actually him and another guy are doing all the work. So they're actually going to end up splitting the proceeds 3 ways. So they're looking at a potential profit of around 35 to 40,000 on that one. They're looking at splitting the profit, the 13,000 three-way. Well, it's 40, let's call it 40,000. So 13,000 each party for the three parties. So that's a great place to go if you're looking for like a hard money loan, but from somebody that understands a little. I don't want to say understand a little more, but maybe somebody nicer, somebody that's not looking to gouge or take advantage as much. Because for the most part, the people that are there that have the hard money are people that started at zero, right? Like myself, as an example. Like when I had started flipping properties, when I started down the rental property track, I literally started with $0, like nothing at all, right? And so that's where I went, and I found some great people there that were 20 or 25 years down that route that had cash and were more willing to help a young up and comer like myself back in the day at a little better of a rate and a term, which was nice. Oh, Mark, absolutely. So we service Southeast Michigan, the 5-county area, Oakland County, Wayne County, Washtenaw, Livingston, and Macomb, which I kind of said that non-geographically, but everywhere in Southeast Michigan. We have over 90 agents on the team at the moment, looking to grow that. So if anybody's considering becoming a real estate agent, let us know. Looking to grow that to around 150 agents before the end of the year. And our agents live in communities that we service all across Southeast Michigan. Yeah, we go pretty wide, which is actually very nice. So in a lot of cases, we're seeing a lot of our folks moving from, actually, this just happened, Northville to Rochester, right? Which for people that know the geography of Southeast Michigan, that's quite a move. And it's hard to be an expert in both areas. So they ended up using one of my agents that knows Northville very, very well to sell their home, and then using another agent on the team that lives in Rochester to help them with their home purchase, right? And end up being the best client experience for the client because they've got two local experts, and being on the same team, we had a lot of sharing of information. So we were able to tie that up, that sale and that purchase up very, very well. That's a great question. Keep going, guys. What else do you have? Looking for more questions. And again, my name is Mike Perna with the Perna team with Keller Williams, Southeast Michigan. I don't say that nearly enough. In addition, guys, check out our YouTube channel. We just kind of did a relaunch on that. We've got some great videos on there. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and throw that link in there. Please give me a subscribe if you are not subscribed. I would appreciate that greatly because I'm trying to audience right now. Oh, there you go. I win. Okay, cool. Yep. So show me a subscribe. Check out some of the videos. Check out some of the likes. So far, we've done a video on Northville. Okay. We're just about to put one out in about a week on Royal Oak, like a day in the life in Royal Oak. We've got a couple of top 5, top 7 videos, like top 5 events in Metro Detroit in August, top 5 events in Metro Detroit in, actually, it's the top 7 in September, because we've been getting just a ton of rain here. My Detroit people, I know you feel me on that. I'm going to do a video series on 5 things to do on a rainy day in each county, which is kind of fun because really, especially with the kids, you got to find something to do. Even though today is frankly gorgeous. Absolutely. We should all be outside. I should be outside. I used to do these outside. That's a great question. And Mark, I'm gonna throw that question back at you because I really like that question. I want to hear your answer. Gary Keller is very, very close, if not at the very top of the list, right? And he is inspiring on his own level. So Gary Keller, and to give people a little bit of background, Gary Keller founded Keller Williams back in the early 80s. And at the time, his goal was 50,000 agents, 500 offices, and 5, right? That's what he wanted to create. He wanted to create wealth for others and thereby creating his own wealth, right? And that goes back to the old Zig Ziglar. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. And now today, 80,000 agents. He's the biggest real estate organization in the world. But even more important than that, in my opinion, is the organization called KW Cares, which is an actual nonprofit. It's a registered nonprofit. And every year there's 14 to 15 million that flows through that. And I'm a very big donor of that, that flows through that every year to help people in need. And that looks like a lot. So one of the ways that shows up is we had a front desk person at one of the local offices here, whose father it was, and this is before the Affordable Care Act and things like that, whose father was uninsured, had a heart attack, and needed bypass surgery, right? And KW Care stepped in, and they didn't pay for the whole thing, but they did foot 80% of that bill. Otherwise, it would have just tanked him. Honest to God, would have just, I mean, some of this medical stuff is just gets so super expensive, it would have tanked him, right? But think about that. So he made this organization, and the spinoff of it is this nonprofit that can step in and just completely save somebody's life. There's an agent in Indianapolis who had suffered really badly from a very bad house fire. The insurance company had been fighting them quite hard, and not to be offensive, but they were kind of scroogey, and they wrote the check to rebuild the house way under what it would actually cost to rebuild the house. Again, KW came in and shored up the last 60,000 of that, right? In addition to that, Gary, which I thought this was impressive, we've got working towards a dozen, but 8 semis that can be on the road in a moment's notice, and we can actually beat FEMA to disaster areas to deliver things like clean water, bedding, clothing, generators, food, all of that. Right. And we saw that show up in a big way in Houston when those trucks hit the road and actually beat FEMA, right, during that hurricane. Another one that really inspires me, I'm trying to think of who else, like Tony Robbins, of course, John Maxwell, of course. And in a way, and it's probably going to be very unpopular, but I look at Jeff Bezos, and he's inspiring on a different level. And again, this is not a statement on whether or not I like Jeff or not like Jeff, or have a great opinion or a poor opinion, but he's inspiring in a way that he can overtake a competitor, even though all the odds are against him. And I kind of love that. I kind of love that seeing that happen gives me hope that I can do that, if that makes sense. So here's what I mean by that. So Jeff Bezos had gotten into the data storage game. I don't know, what was it, maybe 10 years ago, right? So he started with books, then he started selling everything else. And then he was like, you know what, I'm going to get into cloud computing and stuff like that, because why not? IBM was the big player at the time. Oracle was fairly big in it. Google wasn't even really in it. Apple wasn't really even in it at that moment. Microsoft wasn't even in it. Like, it was basically IBM and Oracle, IBM making up the lion's share of the market, right? It's hard. It's hard to come in and disrupt a market when one company has 80% market share and they've got all the income from it with which to do battle, right? And we see Facebook doing that today, companies, and I'll talk about that. But Jeff came in and said, you know what? I think we can do it and do it better. Now, Amazon has over 70% of that market. Right. And even Keller Williams itself, and myself, and we use the Amazon servers, right, to power our back end, because frankly, their uptime is better than anybody else, and their speeds are better than anybody else. Now we've got a couple other people in the game. Google's gotten in the game, Microsoft's gotten in the game, and Microsoft's gotten in the game in a big way. And you can see how well this is working out by their stock price. They're up over 40% this year. But how Microsoft has done it is Microsoft is moving towards AI specifically. So their servers are geared to be the best for AI, which is kind of that next horizon. Now, when I was Facebook does it differently. So Facebook will tend to, instead of trying to build something from the ground up, they'll just buy the company or copy a company, right? Straight out. Like, I mean, and I'm sure they would say that's inflammatory and that's a horrible thing to say, but it's also the truth, right? So, look at, and Google does the same thing, right? So Google paid $500 million for YouTube. Facebook paid roughly $500 million for Instagram, right? I forgot the name of it, but there's a new social media platform that kind of really caught fire at the beginning of the year. It's voice only, audio only, Clubhouse. There it is, right? Clubhouse. It kind of started catching fire, and then And then Facebook came out and literally just different colors, right? And because they're big and because people are already on the Facebook platform, it's kind of shutting down that entire, frankly, platform. They couldn't buy them, so they copied them. Yeah. Oh, that's good. Atomic Habits is a great book. Great book. And we've had actually a couple of our people read that and get a ton out of it. And if anybody hasn't read it, grab Atomic Habits, and then also grab the four disciplines of execution, 4DX. That sounds right. And so, if I'm wrong, but Atomic Habits, I'm going to pick up Tiny Habits. I don't have that. And the four disciplines of execution. Is that right? Of course not. I got to Google it. Four disciplines of execution, achieving your wildly important goals, your WIGs, by Chris Chesney. Can't pronounce the name. Yeah. So Atomic Habits plus 4DX have really gotten me a long way. Actually, one and who has listened to this as an audiobook, let me know. Recently, I listened to Green Lights by, has anybody listened to this? By Matthew McConaughey, like all right, like that guy. Which that was like an accidental line. Come to find out, the movie, he didn't even have that line. The line wasn't written. It was just like, it just kind of happened. Where did that go? There we go. That one. And if anybody has not listened to this, give it a listen. It's really good. And not only is it really good because it's a Matthew McConaughey, but it's a lot of life wisdom and a lot of good life wisdom, right? And I know, like at first when it was recommended to me, I was like, this is what does he know about real life? And as it turns out, he knows a lot about real life. Like, he came up without money. He came up, in a very small town of a couple thousand people in Texas, and he had to kind of fight his way through, which is cool. It's a cool story. And it's a cool story all the way up to basically, this year late last year when he released it. And I hope he puts out a second one. But Green Lights, very inspiring, very good. And I would definitely get an Audible instead of the book, just because he reads it himself and his voice is awesome. Keep going, guys. What else we got? Questions on anything, questions, comments. What else? And I cannot believe I'm keeping everybody's attention without Austin, which, thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. Which means you guys like me better than Austin, and that's okay. He's probably one of the people watching. Yeah, I'll let it get weird. Now, guys, thanks for listening to me rant for 44 minutes. And thank you again for the questions and everything. And going back to the investor track, just a couple of last notes on that. In some cases, you got to be super careful right now in this market, especially when you're flipping something. This has become a really hard market to flip in. It just has, because it's hard to find the property or at the value you really need to get them at to get that profit, right? Oh, that's a good one. That's a great comment. Most people assume Atomic Habits involve huge change initially, and that is a great comment. That is absolutely true, that it does not involve huge change initially. Incremental change, right? It's the pursuit of perfection, not perfection. It's the journey, not the final destination, is what we're after, right? Good example of this, actually just in my personal life, is getting up earlier, right? It's very difficult to go from I wake up at 7 every day to the next day I wake up at 5 every day. But it's a lot easier to go from, okay, I wake up at 7 and now I wake up at 6:40. And then I do that for a week. Now I wake up at 6:20 and I do that for a week. 6 and I do that for a week. And by the time you get 6 weeks down the road, you're actually waking up at 5. And an unbearable change. Same thing with diets. And part of the reason why diets don't work is because you push, not you, but a lot of people push so hard for an immediate and abrupt change, right? And again, throwing myself out there as the example, I used to weigh 60 pounds more than I do. And I did not, go on a diet, right? I started with simply just cutting cream out of my coffee, which sounds like not a big deal and it shouldn't have any sort of an effect. But people who know me know that I drink like 50 cups of coffee a day. Well, I drink like 10. So if I cut the cream out, then I cut the sugar out, right? And then I don't have dessert as often, right? And then I switch, this for this. And just over time, over the course of 6 months, I've changed my diet and I've done it incrementally. I haven't done it all at once. That's a good question. How do you describe the real estate market to somebody right now? I would describe the real estate market as trying to ride a unicorn that's trying to ride a shark that's trying to circle the moon and back. No, no, kidding. Evening out. I would describe it as evening out, right? Our monster equity jumps, our monster price jumps and price gains are starting to slow down. We've got fewer, thank you for the laughs. I appreciate that. We've got fewer multiple offer situations going on right now than we have in the past 6 months or a year, which is great for buyers. The values are still pretty far up there, which is great for sellers. Had this conversation with somebody yesterday that they're considering waiting 2 years because they're thinking as the property values are going to come down, right? And my question is, okay, do you have evidence around this? Because I don't, and I'm not asking in an accusatory fashion, but it was hey, show me where you're coming from. Where are the data points? What's causing you to think the values are going to be coming down in the next 2 years or 3 years or whatever that looks like? And come to find out, it was just a gut dream and a wish and a hope and a prayer, right? Like once I unpacked the reason and the thinking behind it, like, is the market come down? It was only because they wanted to, and they're believing their own story, right? When in fact, and one of the things that they said, well, the employment rates were super high. I'm like, but is it? What is the unemployment rate? Well, I don't know. I'm like, well, it's 5.1% and moving down. It's going to be in the 4s in 60 days or less. Oh, well, the economy is super slow right now. I'm like, but is it? GDP just recovered to 100%. Well, the stock market, is at an all-time high. Last week, it did not end at an all-time high, but it ended at 0.1% from all-time high. None of the things that we had as indicators of the crash 12 years ago are actually happening right now. Not one of them. So I would describe the real estate market as, if you're buying, buy. If you're selling, sell. Just treat it as any other market, because again, the market you buy in the market you sell in is the market you buy in, right? Prices are up. You'll be happy when you sell. When you buy, not so happy. And that's okay, what it is. But I do know this, with interest rates hovering around 3%, which is amazing, by the way, which is less than the inflation, right? The inflation rate is 3.2% on average. Your mortgage actually technically gets cheaper every year. And what I mean by that is the value of the dollar goes down 3.2%, but your mortgage, you're only being charged as 3%. So every single year, the value of the dollar is less, more so than the interest you're charged. And let's use a weird example for this. Back in the 80s, a loaf of bread was 30 cents, right? Now, let's say we were still paying 30 cents for a loaf of bread. How happy would we be? Super happy. The reality is we're paying $3 to $5 for the same loaf of bread. Yeah, inflation. That's a great question. Okay, so Jennifer says, does the market really slow down after summertime? What does this look like for agents? How many homes are sold in winter versus summer? So Mark's over in Naples, right? And Florida has a lot less of a swing, so to speak, because their temperatures are much more consistent, right? It's not crappy out. like it is here in Michigan. Or it's not cold. I'll say cold. Let's go with that. So here in Michigan, now this is great. I love this. We see, generally speaking, 8 to 12% change in number of homes sold in the winter 4 months versus our peaks in the summer 4 months. A lot of people, and again, it just goes down to feeling, not fact. A lot of people are like, oh yeah, no, the market slows down. Well, the reality is the market does slow down. Let's call it 10%. And most of the homes that I personally sold, I purposefully try to position it for winter because the buyers are out there, but the sellers aren't. Because moving sucks. Like moving in snow sucks. I don't know if anybody's done it. If anybody's done it, you know. Like, you know how much the slush and the snow and all that stuff, and especially tracking it in and out of two times happens. But with buyers, leases come up all day, every day. Relocations come up all day, every day. New jobs in new areas come up all day, every day. And so I've tried usually to time my home sales for like a December, like a late November, early December for the most part with my flips and whatnot, specifically because, moved in February and it was horrible. Specifically because there are more buyers and slightly less sellers, right? I usually do a couple thousand better during those times. The other thing is a lot of real estate agents, and I love this, they believe their own story. And this is just true of people in general in life. They believe the story that they tell themselves, which is great, good for them. And here's what I mean by that. When I was actively selling and, for let's say 15 years running, however, the number of homes and the volume of homes I sold in April, May, June, July was no different than November, December, January, February. No different because my work was consistent year round, right? And so the market may have gone down 10%. And when I was selling along the 275 corridor, there was an agent that sells in a very specific condo complex, nice condo complex, that would take off middle of September, late September, and not come back until middle of March. And she would just go to Florida and live there. And now she lived in that condo complex and she had 80% of the sales, 70% of the sales in that condo complex, but only 7 months of the year. The other 5 months of the year, she was not here. So then they called me. They're still selling. People are still buying. But there are a significant number of agents that are snowbirds and they winter. And there are a significant number of agents that believe the hype, believe their own story that homes don't sell in the winter, right? And categorically, that is not the case. Not the case, right? Anyway, that's a great question. Personally, I think winter is kind of the land of opportunity because, again, a lot of agents that are 25, 30, 35-year agents, high experience, high market share, they go and they winter somewhere else. And that leaves all those sales for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like there's a gentleman in Farmington Hills that he had a fairly decent lock on 4 neighborhoods, but he used to go winter in Arizona. So for 3 months of the year, I just pounded those neighborhoods and I got the lion's share of the sales for those couple of months. And it was great because he just wasn't here to sell the homes. Begin to consider selling a home or buying a home with a tiny habit. That's a great point. So it just takes an incremental step to move forward to begin any journey, right? Like any journey, let me phrase that differently. Any journey is started with the first step, right? So that's one step, 1 foot in front of another. And for me, and I use myself again, because I like to do that. For me, what that has become is every week I'm taking 30 minutes to an hour just set aside to clean out stuff from my house and my basement and pack the stuff up, put it in the truck, take it to Salvation or whatever that looks like and donate it. Because when I get to the point of moving, I want 50% less stuff to move, which has been a pain because, you live somewhere, you accumulate stuff and Amazon's not making this any easier, guys. Well, not for me, at least. There's probably an Amazon package sitting out there right now. Okay. So what's on my schedule this week? Great question. So we've got our Zoom on Monday. We've got our leadership call on Monday. I'm going to be shooting another YouTube video, which will be fun. And then I got to work with our inside salespeople a little bit this week. Tuesday, we're doing a all team advance, which is super fun. So we're going offsite with the entire team for the day. That'll be nice. It's always a nice time when we do that. And we're going to go to a place called Uptown Grill. Nice little location. It's kind of a mostly outdoor, kind of indoor environment. Make it as safe as we can, right? And then I've got my coaching call with my coach at 3 p.m. And then I'm going to be working on the script for the next video, if that makes sense. Wednesday, as we're getting close to the end of the month, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, I'm probably going to be knee deep in transactions. Thursday, I'm going to be shooting another city, Novi, Michigan as well. But Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, because we're getting close to the end of the month, I know I'm going to be helping on a lot of agents. We've got a lot of newer agents on the team that definitely need a little guidance because they're going through their first, second, or third deals. And that's cool. That's what we're here for, right? That's what myself, Austin, Sadie, that's what we do. Joe, Mark, right? That's a great question. Now, and a lot of my week, especially when we get to the end of the month, I try to keep as open and fluid as I can. In addition to that, I've got a couple of runs, right? So I'm going to try to put down somewhere around 25 or 30 miles this week. Well, no, I'm not going to try. I will put down 30 miles this week. That will happen. And then I'll make it to the gym 4 times, right? Not a big, weightlifter guy, but it actually helps my run times. Ooh, I hear a first closing on Friday. That's awesome. I remember. You will never forget your first. You'll forget your 50th closing, but you'll never forget your first closing. It's a lot of fun. Might be a little anxious at the time. Mark, I mean, I'm sure you can attest to this. Might be a little nervous at the time, but just remember it. Just enjoy it, right? It's fun, especially doing anything for the first time that's exciting is fun. Oh, you got me there. Okay. So I'll be watching Mega Camp as well, and I'll be on in the office playing in the background. That's a good point. I forgot about that. And for anybody that doesn't know, Mega Camp is a Keller Williams event. It's one of the 2 big events that we do every year, or we used to do every year. The intention this year was to again have it in Austin, and I think Gary had it at 2,000 people that were going to go, then 1,500 people, then 500 people. Then he just kind of gave it up. Austin's got a lot of restrictions because of COVID right now, like a ton of restrictions. And they just kept doing battle back and forth. And finally Gary's like, hey, you know what? This is too much. I'm just going to cancel the event. Like the restrictions and the guidelines and trying to get everything together. Like the cost became unbearable. The involvement became unbearable. And he said, you know what, guys? Forget about it. Now there is a mini Mega Camp going on, I think in 2 locations, one in Vegas and then one somewhere on the East Coast, which I think is very interesting. And that's a very interesting way to get that done. There we go. Which is cool. And I don't know if it's Vegas proper or maybe like a Henderson. It's probably Vegas proper. I know it's not going to be a big event like it usually is. It's usually like 10 to 12,000 people. Not during COVID time. Oh, there we go. And then this year it's going to be 60,000 online, which is actually bigger than most real estate companies. Yeah. And a third of our company will be watching that, it looks like. Wow. Great questions, guys. We actually made it all the way to an hour. I love that. All right. We've got a minute left. What do you got? Anything at all? Any questions? Anything you want to ask? I'm just going to sit here for a minute and I'm going to wait for it to go. Anybody? Hey, how's the weather down there, Mark? It's got to be nice. I feel like it's nice. I mean, we've got a hurricane hitting New England in a hot minute. First time in 30 years that's happened. I clearly read the news a lot. Oh, Mega Camp is open to anyone. Good point. Doesn't matter if you're in real estate or not. It is a great event. It's a lot of mindset stuff. It's actually good for other. If I were in a different industry, I something like this as well. I'm not just talking in general, like mortgage or title or something like that. I mean, like if I was in a different industry where I was trying to build some sort of a business, it's a great mindset event and a great leadership event. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. Shameless plug. considering buying, considering selling, give us a call anytime, 248-886-4450, thepernateam.com, Michael Perna at kw.com. And other than that, get out and enjoy the weather. We've only got a couple more weeks of this before we start hitting fall. And with fall, of course, comes like the cider mills and things like that. And then after that comes Halloween, which is awesome and my favorite. All the things to look forward to. But for today, I'm going to go outside and I'm just going to be on the outside. And that's it. All right, guys, make it a great day. Thank you, Jennifer.